As we move on, we're going to just start to look at just so many menus. We've looked a bit at the project menu, and you could see how within that we can dive into the properties and some of the importing and exporting. So we're going to move on with other ones as well. We'll look at the layer menu, the vector menu, raster, and so on. But before we do that, I want to move into the toolbar. So we saw the project toolbar. The next thing I want to walk through is the map navigation toolbar, and then we're going to get into some of how to extract attributes, look at tables, how to do some interactive selecting, and then we'll begin to move back into the editing toolbar so that way we can figure out how to do some digitizing. So there's a whole lot of different toolbars and menus that make QGIS work. So let's continue that process now as we move into the map navigation toolbar. So again, these toolbars are dockable. I'm going to just pull this one out so you can see. And again, you've seen some things that I think you're already familiar with. The little hand lets me pan in and out of the area. The zoom in lets me come in. I can zoom on a particular area, and then I can also click and pan to a selected feature. So let's just zoom back. Actually, before we do that, we can see this little arrow here. Lets me zoom to where I last was, and I'm going to kind of jump the gun a little bit, and we're going to select a feature. Let's select in the parcels. I'll make that active. I'll select this feature over here. Now I can click on the pan, so I've now zoomed to the selected object. We'll click the zoom to last again. I can click the zoom forward and go back and forth. We can also zoom in. If you have a mouse wheel, you can scroll in and out using that as well. If I want to see everything again, I can zoom to the full extent of my data. We also have a zoom to a selection. So here I'm zoomed to the selection. You might think, how is that different? Well, if we go back, I can now, let's just zoom to a big area over here, and now I can say let's pan. So notice the map has panned to make the selected object in the center. But when I say zoom to the selection, it will actually zoom into that particular location. Some other things we can do here as we navigate around is I can create a new map view. And in doing that, I now have a view, and that shows me the same map. Now I can also dock it inside here, so I can look at both of these together. I don't really like that so much. I think it's a little bit too small, so I'm going to just move it out. But you can see how if you have a really large screen, you can dock these things really nicely. And in something like this, I can zoom to particular areas, or in this case, I can even say synchronize the view center with the main map. So I'm going to come back into my main map here, and I'm going to zoom into this corner, and now my map center is in that corner. I can come back into this map again. Let's move this over, and I can zoom all the way out, and then let's zoom over to this corner. And you can see the cursor position of where I was, so I'm able to interact between these two maps. And with QGIS, there's just the ability I can create multiple views as well. So it's a nice way to have different views working together with one another. We also have the ability to create bookmarks. So you can see a little bookmark. It looks like there's a little bookmark on that icon. So let's zoom all the way out again to the whole area. And let's just zoom to the northeastern section. So now I can click on a new bookmark, and I'm going to call this bookmark, call this one Northeast. So now I have my Northeast bookmark. I'll get rid of these others. I accidentally hit two of them. So now I have a pane that's set up for the bookmark. It gives me all kinds of information about it. It also gives me the SRID. And then let's zoom all the way out again, and I'm going to look at this southwest. So let's zoom here, and we'll create another bookmark, and we'll call this one Southwest. We'll delete that one again. And let's zoom all the way out. So now when I come in here to Southwest, I can zoom to the bookmark. That's the Northeast one. Sorry about that. Let's rename that. So let's start back up again. Let me zoom all the way out and let's go to the Southwest. So now I'm in the Southwest corner. So in here I can now add a bookmark and we'll call this Southwest. So when I click on Northeast, I can zoom to the Northeast. If I click on Southwest, I can move to the Southwest. And we'll zoom all the way back out again. So this again tells you a little bit about the navigation toolbar. So what I want to do next is, since we're already viewing things, let's skip the edit menu and go to the view menu. So this gives me more things. So here now I can use the pan button, or again under view, I can look at the zoom in button, and that's just like pressing the zoom in, but I'm selected through a menu. And now we can go into being able to identify features. So you can see that is another toolbar that we have here. Actually, let's let this one float a little bit. And here we have the attributes toolbar, and that's also under the view menu. So you can see identify features, measure features, and then get statistical summaries. So here is the identify features. I've got my parcels, my active theme. I can click on this one particular parcel and you can see it's turned red, or I can select this parcel and now you can see the information about the individual property parcel. Also within the view menu we can measure lines, areas, and angles, or again here I can do the same thing with a drop down, so I can measure a line. So I can go from here, there, to say there, and that's in meters. Or I can change it to kilometers. So this is a really nice feature too that allows us to do our measuring in a number of different units, or again I can measure an area like this. Just keep on left clicking. Let's try that again. Just left click, left click, left click, and then double click. And you can see we've got our square meters up on the top. So we'll quit out of that. So again, you can see that we have the measure tool, and then we can create statistical summaries of different data as well under the view menu. We also have that same ability here on the tools, the attribute toolbar. So in this case, instead of fire stations, let's look at the property parcels, and then let's find an attribute we might be interested in. Maybe we can look at the sale price. So this gives me information now on the sale price in terms of its sum, its mean, its median, standard deviation, and so on. So this is a great way to work with a number of different columns, the average number of stories as well that you might have. Another nice thing too with this is we can say I just want to do it on the selected features. So let's come back in here. And the other thing we can do is select features. Now I can select features by a polygon, by just creating a box, freehand, or radius, but let's just do this one here. So this selected my parcels, and let's go back into the assessment value. So this is my assessed value, the sum. I've got the mean, the median, and so on. But these are the selected values, or I can unclick that and it's going to show it to me for all of the parcels. And again, I can now click this clear all button. So it deselects all the features. So let's select the features by a polygon. So again, I can create my polygon to look like any shape that I want. Double click that, or right click that rather, and that's done. Let's clear it again. And let's create a more of an interesting looking one. Here we go. So I'm just clicking and then right click, and this now selected all the features that are contained in. I can also invert the selected features, so I can select all the ones that weren't, so that's the inverse. The other thing that I can do is I can select the features by a value. So in this case, it's any of these. So what I might want to do here is let's look at, say, the property class, 210, which is single family residential. Oh, sorry, that would be the PC. There we go. There we go. So these are the selected features, the single family residential areas. And you can see, well, this is really nice too. There's a bit of an IntelliSense. So it looks at everything that has a 2. I can look at the 220s. And there's just a few of those. I can also flash the features as well. If I wanted to do that, you can see that they're blinking. So that's another nice way of setting things up. And again, I can add to the current selection. I can remove it from the current selection and so on. So we'll close that again. And we can select by polygon. We select by freehand as well. For some more advanced capabilities, we can select features by an expression. So in this case, we looked at the assessment value before, so I can say something like assessment greater than, let's say, 250,000. And I can select the features, and that selects those parcels that are greater than 250,000. We also have the ability to perform a lot of different mathematical operations within our expression. And I happen to know what the field assessment was, but I can also click on here and say, and look at all the fields that are available to me. So I can scroll down here and select something like square footage greater than 1,000. And we can select the features and have that information come up. So there's a lot of different ways to be able to work with this data. PC equal to, and then let's go to 10. And there we go. So those get selected. So you can see there's a lot of built-in functionality that is actually quite powerful. Another example too is I happen to know PC was 210, but if I don't know all of them, I can come in here and search for the values, and I can say select all the unique ones. So in this case, it's for prop class. These are all the unique property classes. How about for PC? These are all the unique ones. Water district, doesn't seem to be anything in there. We can go to the descriptions. Let's select all the unique. Sorry about that. Let's go back to the water again. Select all unique. So these are private, none, and community or public. So if I'm trying to find out what values do I want to select, I can say water equal to, and then community public. Select the features, and then that will select, and you can see the ones that are on the community and public. Let's look at the ones that are private and select the features. So that shows me where everybody has some kind of a private water system, like their own well. And again, back to our toolbar, we'll just deselect the layer so nobody's selected. Another thing we can do, and we're going to spend more time with this later, but again, I can open up the attributes or the attribute table for the parcels, and here they are. And these are a little bit large, so instead of doing that, why don't we look at a different one. Let's look at the watersheds. I can turn the watersheds on, turn the parcels off. The watersheds are my active theme. So now I can begin to look at the attributes. We can edit the data. We'll get into editing a little bit later. And again, we can filter things where, let's say, the watershed is equal to Fall. And notice I just typed the FALL, and it knew it was Fall Creek. That's one of the watersheds. So again, I can select the features, and you can see Fall Creek is now selected. And in here, if I click on the bottom, we can now change the look in terms of a form layout. And here we can take our selected feature, which is Fall Creek, and you see that's the one that's selected. I can look at all the others, but I can know which one is selected, or something like this where I have this table view and I can see the actual selected feature. Again, look at the select using an expression. That looks familiar, right? We had already seen that. Or select all of them, invert the selection, or select none of them. We did the filtering as well. We can also move the selection to the top. So click here and then that becomes on the top. That's really convenient as well. And what's also nice is as we're working with our table, I can pan to the selected feature, or of course I can zoom to the selected feature as well. So a lot of control back and forth between tables and the map. As we're working with the table too, again, just some interface stuff. I can click on dock the attribute table, and boy, that's a terrible place to put it. But I have the flexibility to just kind of move it over here, and now I have my table docked on the side as I look at my information. And again, I've run out a little bit of screen real estate, so I can zoom to or pan to the selected feature where it's already there as well, or I can invert the selection and then I can zoom to the selected features. And what I'll do real quickly is just undock it again. So that's our original table. Lastly, I just want to show you we can use a field calculator. So this allows me to create either update an existing field or create a brand new field. And in this case, I can create a new field. The new field is going to be called Arts Field. Okay, we can make it an integer, so there's all kinds of different things that we can make it as well. So let's go into, say, the math field, and let's grab the floor of the perimeter value. But actually, before we do that, I'm just going to put in floor of 12.1, and notice it gives me a preview of what that will be. But what I've just done is I'm going to click on the fields and values. So I want the floor of the perimeter value. We'll hit OK. That's done. And now we have Arts Field, which is basically the same value, but I've just taken the floor. Okay, let's do one last thing. I'm going to hit Control A, right? So Control A selects everything. Let's go to the calculator again. And this time, let's start to get a little bit, kind of a little crazy with this. Let's create a virtual field. We'll call it buff area. We'll make it a decimal number. And what we're going to do is select the area of the buffer. Right? So we've got those geometry functions of the individual geometry. So if I come down here and I find geometry, if I select the $sign, you can see this returns the geometry of the current feature, and I want to buffer it by, let's say, 100 meters. And you can see it gives me some information already about that. I can hit select. I had another field that was just blank. So here's buff area, and here's the area. So you can see it's increased quite a bit because we actually performed a geometric function, right, using the buffer of our field. This is really powerful. I mean, again, I think try to find another GIS that does this, and I think you'd be hard pressed. This is super easy to pull off, and I think that's probably the best way to just be done with this section before we move on to the next part.